Silly game for a lady scientist, isn't it?
Well, the ship's not in bad shape. Paul and I can probably fix that computer and... You afraid?
That's just what I was wondering. Isn't everyone afraid?
Well, we all knew what could happen on a trip like this. No one guaranteed we'd make it.
I wasn't looking for any guarantees. It's just that back on Earth it all seemed so noble. Everything was remote.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Crafted, number 7. This is what I'm getting into, Lisa. This is my thing, apparently. Mystery being like, what am I going to do when I run out of fingers and thumbs and whatnot? But, well, we'll figure it out when we get there. We've got Lisa Burbage here today. She's been so kind to join us. We're going to have a great conversation, I believe, judging by the pre-conversation conversation. And I am happy to say we have a sponsor, New York-based Podblade. Ram Raviv is a really great guy, and he's got an amazing service. If you'd like to have a podcast, but you have zero interest in developing the skills or devoting the time to making it amazing, Ram's your guy. Podblade they'll edit it for you. Their turnaround time's incredibly fast, and it's insanely inexpensive. I really don't know how he makes any money, but that's his problem. It's not mine. So, but Podblade, if you're interested, podblade.com. With that all said, we are actually, as we were just discussing a bit before the thing, I'm actually right now at the Harbor Accelerator, the Harbor Entrepreneur Center, where this studio is located. If you'd like to have a podcast, it'd be something you're interested in, let those folks know. Maybe let me know. I'll let people know. We'll arrange it. We'll make it happen. And there's that. That's all the formalities out of the way. With that, Lisa Burbage, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Boyd. How about yourself?
Pretty stellar, honestly. And it feels wrong, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
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 How about yourself?
Well, I tell you, I wish I was where you were at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center instead of my home, because
Really?
But I guess we can't do that right now, right?
Yeah, I guess so. We'll work on trading for our next interview. You can be here. I'll be there. So, how's things going? Tell people a little bit about yourself if they don't know anything about you. And based on what I've heard about you so far, it'd be hard for a lot of people to not have been in touch with you, at least tangentially. So, explain to people who you are in your business right now, and we're certainly going to get into a little bit about your past.
Okay. Well, right now, I am the CEO of Wellness 5 LLC. And what we do is employee wellness. Myself and my coaches, we go on site. Well, let me back up. Historically, we've been going on site. During the coronavirus, we're now doing virtual, and it's going well. So I have a feeling that moving forward, when we get on the other side of the virus, I'll be offering both virtual and on-site options.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were developing a workshop for dentists when all this thing went down, and had to make a virtual version of it. So I kind of feel you, which is interesting, because then you think, the scalability of a virtual version is just insane versus the travel time and expense and the devotion on everybody's part. So there's lots of advantages there.
Yeah, it is. I would have been, I wouldn't have agreed with you a year ago, because I do love interacting face-to-face with my students in a group setting, which is what I do. I do group coaching. But I had a group yesterday, and it went really well. People are interacting. And what I've noticed is sometimes people interact more in a Zoom platform where they can be a little bit anonymous.
Right. Now, see, interesting. That's really interesting. Well, before because I would definitely want to dig into that a little bit, because I think people are going to find that relevant. But what is Wellness 5, and what do you do? What services do you provide?
Well, as I mentioned, we help companies get their employees happier, healthier, and obviously more productive.
Right. Okay. How long have you been in this line of work?
5 years. 2020 was
years.
5 years.
That's so next year it'll be Wellness 6.
Yeah. I know I didn't put I didn't put that together, but yeah.
Right.
And the reason the company is called Wellness 5 is we focus on more than just the physical side of health, which is what most people think, exercise and nutrition. But we focus on whole person health, which is what I've been trained to do, which is helping people get healthier in all aspects of their lives, because one dovetails on another. If you're having financial stress, which a lot of people are right now for that matter, then that can overlap into your eating habits and your exercise habits and how you interact with the world and how your relationships go. They all really dovetail into each other. So I cover the 5 areas of health.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I was just having a great conversation with Rebecca Shaw. I don't know if you know her. She's a clinical hypnotist. We spent a bit of time getting real nitty gritty about that. Very, very cool stuff. But a lot of that conversation was, everything outside of us has so much to do with what's inside of us, right? And that there is no compartmentalization when it comes to any one of this, let's say, 5 factors of wellness.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's you can't really compartmentalize them, but I have to be honest, when I go on site and when I work with companies, my programs are all focused on creating healthy habits, right. Making behavioral change, creating behavioral change so people can make new habits and, more importantly, keep them. And so most companies don't want me to go in and do relationship coaching around personal relationships. That's just not what they're hiring me for. So what I typically do focus on is exercise and nutrition, with a little bit of stress management in the mix as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, that raises an interesting question, right? Then how do you fill the relationship gap? Do you have anybody you bring in from outside that will help them on the relationship side, or is that just like, hey, eHarmony?
Yeah, well, I can't really do much in the way of love relationships or personal relationships, but I have some great resources in the way of business relationships and business communication. I know some great coaches in that space. So
yeah, I think Charleston's. I think if you're lucky enough to live in Charleston, there's so many reasons why you might be so lucky to live in or around Charleston, South Carolina. Not to rub it in if you're somewhere else right now and during the pandemic. But one of them is that there are just a lot of really great experts or really well-heeled people that are also extremely good people. I worked in Atlanta for a while, and there's a lot of expertise. There's a lot of skill, but you don't find the same level of warmth or personal engagement or investment that I found with people here.
Yes. It's real. Now I have to be honest. I've never worked outside of Charleston. I'm not originally from here, but in my working life, I've always worked in the Charleston area. It's still very important. It was 15 years ago. It's still very important today that people know you. It's not, okay, you call me on the phone, I know nothing about you. People want to get to know you. They want to make the time to get to know you. And then once they get to know you, then it's easier to refer business. It's easier to want to help you. It's more reciprocity. I help you, you help me. We know each other now.
Right.
I really like that aspect of doing business here, and I've been fortunate enough to have done it for a while. So
yeah, very good. Well, so when you say you've been fortunate enough to do it for a while, you're not just talking about 5 years with Wellness 5. You're actually also talking about what?
Well, prior to starting my company, Wellness 5, I was a top real estate agent in Charleston for a long, long time. And that was I got in it at the right time. There weren't a lot of people in it. Built some great relationships, not only with my clients, but with other realtors, appraisers, mortgage people. It was a great time to be in real estate, but I ended up getting breast cancer, and it was a real wake-up call that I needed to slow down. Type A's like me, we have a hard time slowing down. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it would just kind of brings me up, what's the correlation between your aha, eureka, I need to take care of myself moment and the decision to start Wellness 5?
Well, like I said, I'm a type A personality. And so type A's, we just go, 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 go. And the only way for me to slow down was for me to get sick. I mean, looking back, whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever, I mean, that had to happen to me for me to pay attention. And I see that a lot with my clients. Something usually has to click to make them want to do what's necessary to get healthy. But in my case, I got well. I went through the treatments. I've never looked back. It was over 10 years ago now. I got, dealt with it, moved on. But after I got well, I decided, I really want to do something else where I can help people on a really deep level. And I just kept coming back to this health and wellness space. If you give somebody their health, it's the greatest gift you can ever give somebody. You can have all the wealth in the world, but if you don't have your health, we all know the end of that saying. So, and it certainly has delivered.
Yeah.
I don't want to get teary-eyed on you, but I have so many students, participants in my programs, past and present, that still email me, call me. I had a student call me the other day from 2 years ago and told me that if she had not learned what she had learned in my program, she'd be eating everything in her house.
Right.
She said, Lisa, I know now what to do, and I that just brings a lot of joy into my life to hear that kind of stuff.
Well, it's also one of those things too, where, you couldn't necessarily be that amazing of a wellness coach if you yourself weren't well. And so, it certainly keeps you from devolving yourself, So this is obviously, we talked a little bit about it before, moving into the virtual world when you have, both of us in our line of work do a lot of interpersonal. It's, almost all of the relationships that I have with clients, almost every single meeting is going to be face-to-face. It's going to be all that kind of stuff. And I personally enjoy it. You say you enjoy the same thing, and maybe this wasn't what you were thinking about doing or how you were thinking about hosting these things. But how's that going? And what are your clients' response to going virtual?
Well, one of the programs that I run is a CDC program. It's the Diabetes Prevention Program. I am one of 11 vendors in South Carolina who's been fully approved by the CDC to run that program for them.
Yeah.
And, for 2 years, I sent them data showing that my participants got results. They lost weight and they started moving more. And so after 2 years of submitting data, the CDC said, okay, Lisa, you and Wellness 5, y'all get results. We're going to make you a full vendor for us. But they've been real strict about the virtual part of it. They didn't want us to go virtual. It had to be in-person, face-to-face group coaching. Well, during this, they had to rethink everything. And so now I've been on multiple webinars in the last few weeks about how to take the program virtual. And so, you can, as long as it's HIPAA compliant, and Zoom has a platform that's HIPAA compliant.
Okay, cool.
Then I can take the program virtual.
That's
what I've done.
Well, that's awesome. And that's good information.
Yeah.
That's so. we're talking about pivoting. We're talking about people, obviously having one business before, pre-COVID, we like to say, then there's going to be post-COVID. And a lot of people are making adjustments right now to be able to make do, obviously try to leverage the situation for what it is, and do their best. But I mean, I talk with a lot of people about making sure they don't get stuck in this mindset that this COVID, right? This isn't going to last forever. Humans are very adaptive creatures, which means especially when we're reinforcing one another's behavior, right, in mass. And that's what's going on right now. So there's a lot of people that are getting into rhythms or habits, right, that are probably going to be very peculiar to a world pandemic type scenario. And then there's going to be this kind of uncomfortable transition into post-COVID world. Have you thought about that, and how is your business handling that?
Well, as I mentioned to you before we got on the call, I really, up until this pandemic, I was not doing anything virtually. Everything was, I go on site, I run my programs, I leave. Right. And now I see the beauty of being able to do both. Scalability as far as me being able to offer my programs to companies that have multiple locations. That was always a concern. I've got one really good client who has multiple locations, and we've never been able to offer it except to their corporate location.
Right.
And so they're like, we've got employees in all over the country, and we want to be able to offer it. I was talking to them this week. I think after this is over, we're going to offer our first virtual program.
That's
so all of their employees can take advantage.
That's so cool. And you had mentioned before that, probably one of the benefits to virtual is that people enjoy some degree of anonymity, right? And the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that has been interesting. When you're face to face, eyeball to eyeball with someone, it's a little hard to not that anybody would intentionally not be truthful, but sometimes when it comes to saying, well, I was going to exercise, but I didn't, you're looking eyeball to eyeball. We've done it. We've all done it, right? And so in a virtual call, a Zoom call, especially if they're calling in, not doing the video part.
Right.
They don't have to look at me. I don't see them. They can speak up if they want. They don't have to speak up.
Right.
You don't have, so they can, I don't want to say hide, but they don't have to be quite as vocal if they don't want to be. I guess maybe that's the way to say it.
I think part of it too might be that people are, when you're not really around other people, the brain is not as stressed out trying to manage every small action, everything you're doing, because everybody's trying to guard their ego and avoid judgment and things like that. And,
right.
and certainly virtual forums allow for a little bit more freedom in that regard. Not to mention, it's always very awkward whenever you get into a weird situation in a meeting, in a boardroom, and you just kind of just dip out in the middle of the meeting. That's, in Zoom, you can lie to the coach and just click, oh, I lost connection,
Yeah.
Lots of.
Well, but you bring up you bring up a really interesting point though, Boyd, because it works both ways. I've had people do just the opposite. They speak up more.
Well, right.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I think this is a cool path. I like this.
Yeah. So there's people who are usually quiet for all of the reasons you just said. The boss is in the room. There's some political dynamics, business dynamics. This is my boss. I'm not going to say, tell him I ate two pieces of pound cake last night or whatever. But in a virtual platform, nobody's looking at each other.
Right.
So it's a little bit safer space to say, well, you know what? Like yesterday, I had one of my students who doesn't normally speak up, and she was very talkative yesterday. And she was not telling us good stuff. She was saying, Lisa, I just couldn't get away from the cornbread. She was just pouring it out. And no judgment, but she really felt very free to share that with the group.
Right.
And then once she started sharing, others started sharing. Well, maybe I wasn't perfect either.
Right.
You know?
Well, and the beautiful thing about Zoom too, or any other such forum, is that there's not the post-meeting tension. There's not that I'm going to dip out for lunch, but I got to come back, and walk by Tina's cubicle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a problem.
Exactly.
And so I think to some degree, because there is so much of this kind of, I guess you could say, ancillary. There's all these benefits to doing virtual that have absolutely nothing to do with the engagement itself, that are reinforcing the engagement. And I think that that's probably going to drive a lot of the desire on a lot of institutions, such as you or me or the company that couldn't possibly see doing it anywhere but their corporate headquarters, right? Everybody's going to entertain it now, whereas before they wouldn't. So
Right.
the pandemic's been an incredible impetus to change.
Yes. Yeah, it really has. And the other thing is, and again, I'm in the wellness space, in the health space, but what's been very disturbing to me this week alone, as I listened to the doctors speak on the daily task force briefing about the people that are not making it through this virus, who are actually the fatalities that we hear going up every day. And they usually have pre-existing conditions that put them at higher risk. And the four that I keep hearing are obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, which is high blood pressures in that, and people who have asthma or chronic lung conditions. They are, when they get it, they can't fight it.
Well, it's so interesting because I am, first of all, I don't have anything else better to do. So, I'm single. I have no kids. I just have business, and that's it. And so, whatever downtime I have, I'll kind of nerd out on. So, of course, I'm nerding out on the coronavirus and all of the economic fallout and everything. And one of the things that I've seen recently, it's really kind of an aggregation of a lot of the opinions, a lot of the doctors that have been treating people, is that they were expecting that it was going to be this primarily like a pulmonary event, and they're kind of concluding that it's interesting that the disease seems to be starving them or downgrading their oxygen capacity, right? Which certainly suggests that it's limiting mitochondrial metabolism of oxygen, which is very different. And so there's the economic uncertainty. There's it's bad enough just as a really terrible version of the flu. We just don't have a way. But then it's this idea too that it could be something even more different. That's even more terrifying. So it's one of the things where again, having had a number of these conversations, both in this way, and then of course just in my personal life, so many of the conversations in the last week and two have been, I think, people coming to terms with nobody knows. Nobody knows when, nobody knows how, nobody knows how long, nobody knows what. And it's very hard to make smart business decisions with that being the case. However, you're in a really great business in that sense, because if people can control one thing that's going to make sure that they're set up for success, it's probably what?
Taking care of their health.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was last night. Like I said, the days tend to run together anymore, but I heard the head of the CDC, he was actually speaking, and they were, complimenting Americans for embracing this social distancing so well. I mean, people took it serious and they changed behaviors. And I listened to what he said, and probably differently than a lot of people, but he also said, changing behaviors is so hard, yet people have really done this very, very well. That's what I teach. That's my whole premise, is helping people change behaviors, and it is hard. So does it take a pandemic for people to get the wake-up call that we need to change behaviors? I don't know. I mean, like you said, I don't know that anybody has that answer, but when we want to do something, we definitely can do it.
And I think that that's such an incredible point. One of the things that Rebecca Shaw had mentioned, she said before she could ever help anybody, she had to figure out what they were willing to do. You know, and I think you're kind of saying the same thing, which is that if you want to do it, it's certainly a possibility. But if you don't want to do it, you know, well, it's going to be a challenge. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
So what makes you want to do it? Sometimes it's a pandemic. In my case, it was a major health scare. I mean, it's different for, you know, when I start a program, I always ask my students, you know, why are you here? What you're here because you want to, obviously you want to do something different, but why?
Right.
And if they tell me their doctor sent them, I already know they're not going to succeed. That's not motivating. That doesn't motivate.
Well, it was this or death. You know?
Yeah.
You know, well, I think too, what's so interesting about that is it's impossible. You know, you've had breast cancer. I have never had breast cancer or any other cancer for that matter. But I did injure my back pretty badly when I was in the military. It wasn't until I couldn't do that I really, really appreciated what I could do. And it wasn't until then I had the perspective to want something else and better and different, to never endure that kind of pain again. And but it's very hard to convey intellectually, right, the benefits of self-improvement. And I think probably most important part of the self-improvement part is the self. Having the confidence and the sense of control over one's self and one's destiny and so on and so forth that comes just through the practice of developing habits, knowing that you can. The success cannot be communicated to somebody who's never engaged in that intellectually. They have to experience it. So how do you go about reinforcing with your students, your clients, right, the desire to continue? How do you motivate them?
Well, most people that come into my programs, especially if they're trying to lose weight or they're trying to, you know, stick with an exercise program, they've tried many different programs. Okay. They've tried many times to do it and they failed. So they always come in with a little skepticism, like, what are you going to do different that these other 10 programs weren't able to do?
Right.
So I know going in that that's how a good majority of them are feeling, but yet they've taken the step to come.
Right.
So they still think, and they still not think, they still have a ray of hope.
Right.
That this time can be different. And so my job as a coach is to find out, you know, why they're back doing this again. Why is it really important to them? Right. And then letting them know that they don't have to be perfect. That's why most of us, we set ourselves up to fail because we're striving to be perfect. And as soon as we eat that second piece of chocolate cake, I bombed. This time is just like the rest of the times. I can't do this. And so that negative voice, that, you know, that tape just starts back up again. And so my job is to really let them know that I'm not another diet coach, another health guru telling them don't eat this, exercise this many minutes. I'm just trying to help them realize that they can do this a little bit at a time and be a better version of themselves, whatever that version is.
Right. And I think something you put out there, so I think it's been said so many times during this pandemic, right, that, you know, I don't remember what the saying is exactly, but it's basically a version of the engineer's dilemma, right? It's like, you know, what is perfection? You know, the perfection is in the engineer's mind. He's not going to put the thing out to the marketplace until he deems it perfect. Well, you know, perfect is entirely subjective. What's perfect to you?
Right.
Well, that doesn't mean perfect looking. It means perfect with all these other different factors combined into that thinking. Oh, and by the way, that's going to shift. It's always going to be moving and changing, as you will as a human being. So it's absolutely a personal journey, right? It's not like, well, the goal line is I feel comfortable putting my half naked body on Instagram, although that'd be nice. I'm never going to get there, Lisa. If for one reason. I really like Chinese buffets, and that's my big gripe for the pandemic. Sadly, yeah. I know, but that's what I do. I have that really I lay down in the booth after I've gorged, and I just flatulate. It's bad, but well, I tell you what, help everybody understand a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you, because again. And this isn't just my opinion, but if you're uncertain about what else to do with your business or with yourself, your family, et cetera, the one thing you can be doing right now is certainly taking control of your personal well-being. That's the one thing that's going to translate into more success than any other thing. I mean, that's not my opinion or anything like that, because my opinion is not worth that much. But the opinions of some very, very well-heeled, accomplished people with a lot of credentials behind their name have determined this. So invest in yourself, invest in your well-being, invest in your people's well-being right now. What about people who aren't at work right now? Their company is trying to find a way of keeping them engaged. Maybe a wellness program is the way to do that. So how can people reach out to you? How can they find you?
Well, obviously my website, wellness5.com. Something that I'm doing right now during the pandemic is every Wednesday, I call it Wellness Wednesday at 12:30. I do a Facebook Live on my Facebook page, Wellness5. I give out tactical, practical tips that people can implement immediately, geared to help us get through the pandemic, however long we're quarantined. That's something I'm doing just right now. Obviously I'm on LinkedIn, and Facebook. So those three places are probably the best way to follow me and keep up with what I'm doing, and also reach out.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And I'll make sure we post a lot of those things, and then in the video description and whenever I post it on LinkedIn and stuff. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to hang out with me and have a conversation. I've enjoyed myself, which is the goal, right? I hope you do too. I hope you had a good time. I really do. And if there's anything obviously that I can do for you, I hope you let me know. And I'm sure you'll be prayerfully hearing from some folks in need of your services.
Well, thank you, Boyd. I had a good time talking with you as well. It was fun to just banter a little bit and have some social connectiveness. So thank you.
Safely. Cool. Thank you so much, Lisa. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You as well. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.